From your daily attire and residence to your education, healthcare, and fundamental liberties, virtually every aspect of modern life was radically reshaped by the events of Victorian Britain between 1837 and 1901. This era was far more than a mere chapter in history books. It marked the genesis of the modern world. In this video, we will explore how the massive wealth generated by the British Empire and the Industrial Revolution fostered a society of deep divides, where extreme opulence coexisted with destitute conditions that remain almost unimaginable today. More crucially, we will examine how this stark inequality ignited the revolutionary ideas and social reforms that continue to define the 21st century. The Victorian Age began on June 20, 1837, when the young Princess Alexandrina Victoria woke up at Kensington Palace to receive news that would change British history forever. With the passing of her uncle, King William IV, the 18-year-old became the sovereign of the world's most dominant power. Within mere hours, Victoria met alone with the Privy Council, a bold declaration of independence that established the tone for a transformative era. This pivotal transition took place while Britain was at a major crossroads. As the world's first industrial nation, it was undergoing growth previously unknown to humanity. Steam engines thundered in factories nationwide, driving textile mills, ironworks, and numerous industries that underpinned British economic strength. Coal output had tripled from 10 million tons a year at the start of the century to over 30 million by the time of Victoria's coronation, fueling not only manufacturing but also a transportation revolution as railways began to span the landscape. In 1837, Britain was a land of sharp contradictions. While industrialization generated immense riches, it also created devastating poverty. Although the 1832 Reform Act had extended voting rights to parts of the middle class, roughly 95% of adults, including all women and working-class men, remained without political voice. The aristocracy and landed gentry held on to power through the House of Lords, even as industrial capitalists started amassing fortunes that challenged ancient family estates. The empire Victoria inherited was already vast, yet it was destined to expand dramatically. British territories stretched from Canada to the Caribbean, and from India to Australia, with strategic bases across Africa. The East India Company held effective control over the Indian subcontinent, while settler colonies in Australia grew rapidly. This imperial dominance brought exotic goods, unparalleled resources, and global influence to Britain, but it also came with moral burdens that would increasingly weigh on the Victorian conscience. As Victoria ascended the throne, religious revival movements were fundamentally reshaping society. Evangelicalism focused on personal salvation, moral integrity, and social reform, impacting both the Church of England and nonconformist groups. This spiritual intensity fueled campaigns against perceived vices, ranging from alcohol to prostitution, while simultaneously inspiring humanitarian initiatives to tackle illiteracy, poverty, and labor exploitation. Sunday schools emerged as vital institutions, providing working-class children with basic literacy alongside religious instruction. Technology altered daily existence at a breathtaking speed. Gas lighting brightened fashionable homes and city streets, normalizing nighttime activities. The telegraph began to revolutionize communication, while improvements in printing made newspapers, magazines, and books more affordable for an increasingly literate public. Photography, invented just prior to Victoria's accession, was poised to offer entirely new methods of documenting reality and understanding visual culture. London itself had evolved into a metropolis unlike any before it. By 1837, with a population surpassing 1.5 million, it was not only Britain's capital but the world's largest and most influential urban hub. Its docks handled cargo from every corner of the globe, Its factories manufactured everything from furniture to weaponry, and its banks financed development across the empire. However, this massive urban growth introduced severe challenges: pollution, overcrowding, disease, and poverty on a scale that required novel approaches to city governance. The Victorian era opened with a confidence bordering on arrogance. Britain viewed itself as the workshop of the world, a beacon of civilization and progress destined to spread enlightenment through technology, commerce, and imperial rule. This self-assured nationalism drove both incredible achievements and significant ethical failures in the following decades. Steamships, telegraphs, and railways shrank distances and linked continents, while scientific breakthroughs broadened human knowledge of everything from electricity to evolution. Yet, behind this facade of technological triumph and national progress lay a society stratified so rigidly that a Victorian could determine a person's exact social status just by looking at their boots. The class system was more than just a matter of wealth. It created parallel worlds where people living feet apart might never truly interact. Their lives were dictated by rules so intricate that an entire industry arose to teach the new money how to avoid social embarrassment. Victorian society was split into three strictly defined classes. At the top sat the aristocracy and landed gentry. Though they made up barely 2% of the population, they controlled nearly 75% of the land. These families, often holding titles dating back generations, maintained country estates and lived off investments and rental income, rarely participating in the distasteful world of actual labor. Their sons received classical educations at elite schools like Eton or Harrow before moving on to Oxford or Cambridge, not necessarily for career training, but to forge social bonds with fellow elites. Meanwhile, the rapidly growing middle class acted as a revolutionary force. Consisting of lawyers, doctors, clergymen, factory owners, merchants, and shopkeepers, this rising segment championed the virtues of thrift, industry, and respectability. Their homes became displays of material success and moral propriety. These homes were crowded with ornate furniture, pianos, and decorative trinkets that signaled both taste and financial standing. For the middle class, maintaining appearances was an obsession, as social acceptance hinged on strictly following behavioral codes. They typically resided in newly built suburbs, architecturally designed to keep them apart from both the aristocratic squares and the impoverished working-class neighborhoods. For the vast majority, nearly 80% of the population, life in Victorian Britain was far grimmer. Industrial workers, miners, dockhands, and agricultural laborers faced grueling 12 to 16-hour shifts in perilous environments. Their living quarters, often called rookeries, frequently consisted of a single room housing an entire family, with multiple households sharing outdoor water pumps and toilets. In these cramped conditions, disease spread like wildfire, leading to drastically shorter life expectancies. Children of the working class rarely stayed in school past the age of 10. Instead, they were sent into factories or domestic service to help sustain their families. The boundaries between classes were strictly policed through countless markers, both visible and invisible. Clothing served as an instant identifier of status. A gentleman's tailored wool suit and silk top hat stood in stark contrast to the rough cotton garb of a laborer. Speech patterns and vocabulary betrayed a person's background immediately. Pronunciation differences were so profound that individuals from different classes sometimes struggled to comprehend one another, despite speaking the same language. Even posture and walking styles were class-specific traits, drilled into children from a very young age. Despite this rigid stratification, the Victorian era witnessed unprecedented, albeit limited, social mobility. Some industrialists climbed from humble beginnings to amass immense fortunes. While the growing civil service and colonial administration opened new doors for middle-class advancement, the nouveau riche, often found that money alone could not purchase social acceptance. This anxiety fueled a booming market for etiquette manuals and finishing schools, which taught everything from proper cutlery use to the protocols of introducing people of varying ranks. As one popular guide cautioned, it is better to be quietly correct than ostentatiously elegant. The wealthy demonstrated their status not only through material possessions but also through philanthropy, which showcased both their fortune and their moral virtue. Charity became an expected duty for the privileged, though it often came with strings attached. Recipients were frequently required to attend church, sign temperance pledges, or display deserving behavior through gratitude and deference. The Victorian middle-class home was more than just a residence. It was a carefully constructed moral fortress. The family unit functioned almost like a religious institution, with the hearth serving as the altar and domesticity as the creed. The famous saying, "A man's home is his castle," was not merely a figure of speech. It reflected a deep-seated belief that the domestic sphere offered spiritual protection against the corrupting forces of the industrial world. Families poured resources into creating homes that mirrored this ideal, with separate rooms for specific functions. Parlors for guests, drawing rooms for women, studies for men, and nurseries tucked away on upper floors. The architecture of Victorian homes reinforced their moral purpose. Imposing front doors created a barrier between the private sanctuary and the public street. Street-facing windows were draped with heavy curtains to block prying eyes. Inside, the layout of corridors and staircases allowed servants to move invisibly, performing their duties without disturbing the family. Even plumbing was subject to moral considerations. Indoor bathrooms were discreetly tucked away, acknowledging bodily functions while keeping them firmly out of sight. Marriage, the bedrock of this domestic sanctuary, was heavily regulated by laws and social expectations that overwhelmingly favored men. A respectable wife was expected to manage the household and embody the ideal described by poet Coventry Patmore as the angel in the house. Pure, selfless, and morally superior, yet completely subservient to her husband. If a marriage collapsed, the consequences for women were catastrophic. Before the Matrimonial Causes Act of 1857, divorce required an Act of Parliament, making it an option only for the incredibly wealthy. Even after legal reforms, a man could divorce his wife simply for adultery, whereas a woman had to prove additional offenses, such as cruelty or desertion, to be granted the same freedom. This obsession with propriety seeped into every corner of life. Language was heavily policed. Table legs were referred to as limbs, chicken parts were called white meat or dark meat, to avoid saying breast or thigh, and pregnancy was almost never mentioned directly, hidden behind euphemisms like being in an interesting condition. This linguistic modesty mirrored deeper anxieties about sexuality, which paradoxically coexisted with a thriving underground trade in pornography and prostitution. The Obscene Publications Act of 1857 targeted not just explicit material but also information on contraception, fearing such knowledge would destabilize the family unit. For the middle class, possessing the right objects was essential for claiming respectability. A home had to display specific items: a piano in the parlor, prominent religious texts, and high-quality furniture with fashionable ornamentation. These were not just decorations, they were visible proofs of moral character. Many families maintained elaborate facades while privately drowning in debt, prioritizing social appearance over financial security. A respectable household required at least one servant, and families would often sacrifice basic necessities to afford this crucial status symbol. Nowhere were Victorian society's contradictions more evident than in its treatment of women. The same culture that claimed to revere women as morally superior beings denied them education, autonomy, and basic rights. all under the reign of a queen who famously condemned women's rights activists. This paradox defined the existence of every Victorian woman, from the aristocrat to the factory worker. The legal status of married women was particularly shocking by modern standards. Under the doctrine of coverture, a wife's legal identity was subsumed by her husband's. Upon marriage, she surrendered her property, her earnings, and her very legal personhood. If a husband decided to leave and take the children, she had no legal power to stop him. Men could commit their wives to asylums for being troublesome, and marital rape was not recognized as a crime. While the law subjugated all women, daily realities varied wildly by class. Wealthy women managed large estates and participated in approved social rituals but were barred from serious education or careers. Their lives were a cycle of chaperoned events, charity work, and waiting for marriage. The physical constraints were just as severe, with fashion dictating corsets that cinched waists to as little as 16 inches, causing breathing issues and organ damage. For working-class women, however, these ideals of femininity were impossible luxuries. They toiled in factories, worked as domestic servants, took in laundry, or hawked goods on the street, all while bearing and raising large families. A pregnant cotton mill worker might labor for 14 hours a day, only to return to the factory days after giving birth. Meanwhile, 1 in 3 working-class women in London entered domestic service, facing isolation, constant scrutiny, and the risk of sexual harassment. Female education remained severely limited. Girls from privileged backgrounds were taught accomplishments designed to attract husbands: singing, watercolor painting, piano, and needlework. Intellectual pursuits were actively discouraged for women, framed as potential threats to their reproductive health. Doctors of the era frequently warned that taxing mental labor could lead to infertility or hysteria. When Bedford College opened its doors in 1849 as the first higher education institution for women, it was met with widespread ridicule and resistance. Despite these immense hurdles, a women's rights movement began to take shape. In 1855, Caroline Norton, who had been separated from her abusive husband and barred from seeing her children, successfully campaigned for the Infant Custody Act. This landmark legislation granted mothers limited access to their children under the age of 7. Barbara Bodishin spearheaded the fight for married women's property rights, while Josephine Butler battled against the Contagious Diseases Acts, laws that permitted police to arrest suspected prostitutes for mandatory medical exams while leaving their male clients completely untouched. The literary world offered another battleground for challenging rigid gender roles. Female authors such as Charlotte Bronte, Elizabeth Gaskell, and George Eliot, the pen name of Marian Evans, crafted heroines who broke the mold of conventional female behavior. To ensure their work was judged on merit rather than gender, these writers often published under male pseudonyms. Their novels interrogated the limited choices available to women and depicted female characters with an intellectual depth and moral complexity that Victorian society rarely acknowledged. Slowly, legal reforms started to erode these restrictions. The Married Women's Property Acts of 1870 and 1882 gradually permitted women to retain control over their own earnings and property after marriage. The Matrimonial Causes Act of 1857 made divorce more attainable, although the system remained heavily biased against women. By the close of Victoria's reign, women had secured limited access to higher education, with women's colleges established at Oxford and Cambridge, though full university membership was still decades away. Beneath the sweeping legal reforms and social movements lay the mundane yet fascinating fabric of everyday life. It is hard to believe, but a Victorian Londoner could post a morning letter inviting a friend to dinner and receive a reply by that same afternoon, all while adhering to a schedule so precise one could set a watch by it. For most Britons, the day started early. In industrial towns, factory whistles pierced the dawn at 5:30 a.m., summoning workers to their posts. By 6 a.m., the streets were alive with carts, vendors setting up stalls, and workers rushing to avoid the penalties of lateness. Breakfast for many laborers was a hurried affair, perhaps a slice of bread with beef dripping eaten on the go, or leftover porridge from the night before. The concept of time itself underwent a transformation during this era. Before the standardization brought by railways in 1847, each town maintained its own local time based on the sun. The Great Western Railway was the first to adopt railway time, based on Greenwich Mean Time, forcing Victorians to synchronize their watches and sparking a national obsession with punctuality. Public clocks became civic landmarks, and the pocket watch became a prized possession, even for working men who saved for months to acquire one. Food habits varied wildly by class. The working poor shopped daily for whatever was within their means, often late in the day when prices fell. Street vendors offered affordable takeaway options like eel pies, baked potatoes, whelks, and pea soup. The 1860s saw the rise of the penny restaurant, serving meat and vegetables to those who could afford it. By the 1880s, fish and chip shops began to appear in industrial towns, offering hot, filling meals for workers on their way home. For the middle and upper classes, the day unfolded as an elaborate ritual. A gentleman might start with a substantial breakfast at 9 a.m., reading newspapers delivered by the first of many daily postal rounds. Ladies paid social calls between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., leaving calling cards if the host was not at home, a polite fiction often used when one simply wished to avoid visitors. Lunch at 1 p.m. was followed by shopping or business, then afternoon tea around 4 p.m., with dinner served as late as 8 p.m. for the fashionable set. Clothing changes marked the passage of time for the wealthy. A middle-class woman might wear a morning dress for domestic tasks, switch to a walking dress for errands, change into a tea gown for afternoon guests, and finally dress in evening wear for dinner. Men followed a similar pattern, transitioning from morning coats to frock coats and then to formal evening attire. In contrast, the working class made do with a single set of everyday clothes, perhaps preserving one Sunday best outfit for church and special occasions. Personal hygiene posed daily challenges. Lacking indoor plumbing, most Victorians relied on washstands with porcelain basins and pitchers. The laborious process of heating and carrying water meant that full-body bathing was typically a weekly event. By the mid-century, public bathhouses had opened in many towns, providing hot baths for a small fee to working people without facilities at home. Evenings highlighted the stark differences in leisure. Working-class families might congregate in pubs, community living rooms where politics were debated and news exchanged. Middle-class households enjoyed parlor games, reading aloud, or musical performances on the essential piano. By the 1880s, gas lighting had revolutionized evening activities, extending the hours for both productivity and recreation. Sunday offered a break in the rhythm for all classes, a day when factory wheels stopped turning and shops shuttered their windows. Although church attendance fell from nearly 60% in the 1851 census to around 35% by 1900, Sunday's special status persisted. Families strolled in parks in their finest clothes, and even the poorest households strove to prepare a special Sunday dinner. While Victorian families enjoyed their leisure, the invisible hands that ensured their comfort rarely rested. The servant class, the largest occupational group in Victorian Britain, inhabited a paradoxical existence. They handled the most intimate details of their employers' lives yet were treated as if they didn't exist. By the mid-century, roughly 1 in 3 working women was employed in domestic service, forming a massive workforce that underpinned the Victorian lifestyle. Behind the facade of every respectable household lay a rigid hierarchy. In grand homes, the butler ruled over the male staff, while the housekeeper managed the female servants. These senior roles commanded respect and better pay. A butler might earn £50 a year with room and board, whereas ordinary maids might receive as little as £6 to £12 annually. The hierarchy descended through ladies' maids, housemaids, and kitchen staff, down to the lowly scullery maids who scrubbed pots and faced the harshest drudgery. A servant's day started before dawn and often stretched past midnight. Scullery maids might rise at 4:30 a.m. to light fires and boil water before anyone else awoke. Even in modest homes with only one or two servants, the work was endless. Floors to scrub, grates to black, meals to cook, and piles of laundry to wash. The physical toll was immense, with many suffering chronic health issues from hauling heavy coal, water, and linens up and down stairs all day. The psychological burden was equally heavy. Servants lived in a strange limbo, physically present but socially invisible. Many households enforced bizarre rules to maintain this illusion. Some servants were barred from using the main staircase or told to face the wall if a family member passed by. The practice of backing out of a room was a physical manifestation of this erasure of personhood. They were instruments of comfort, not individuals to be acknowledged. Young girls typically entered service straight from working-class homes or workhouses. The role of the maid of all work, in smaller households, was especially brutal, combining every domestic task with profound isolation. Lacking the camaraderie of larger staffs, these solitary servants often worked from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., with only a half day off on Sundays, if they were lucky. Their sleeping quarters were often damp cellar rooms or pallets on the kitchen floor. Despite being surrounded by well-stocked pantries, servants often subsisted on meager rations. While they prepared roasts and elaborate desserts for their employers, they themselves lived on bread, dripping, and weak tea. One household manual explicitly advised mistresses, "Never allow your servants the same food as served at your table." It encourages ideas above their station. Yet, petty theft of food became a common, quiet act of rebellion against such deliberate inequality. In larger homes, servants developed their own complex social world below stairs, where the servants' hall operated with its own strict codes and pecking orders. Pursuing intellectual interests was strongly discouraged for women, often framed by the medical establishment as a direct threat to their reproductive capabilities. Doctors of the time frequently warned that the strain of mental labor could result in hysteria or even infertility. Consequently, when Bedford College was founded in 1849 as the first institution of higher learning for women, it was greeted with widespread mockery and opposition. Despite these formidable barriers, a movement for women's rights began to emerge. In 1855, Caroline Norton, who had been separated from an abusive husband and legally denied contact with her children, won a significant victory with the passage of the Infant Custody Act. This landmark law granted mothers limited access to their children under 7 years old. Barbara Bodishin led the charge for married women's property rights, while Josephine Butler crusaded against the Contagious Diseases Acts, laws that authorized police to force suspected prostitutes into medical exams while leaving their male patrons entirely unpoliced. Literature became another front in the battle against rigid gender norms. Female writers such as Charlotte Bronte, Elizabeth Gaskell, and George Eliot, the pen name of Marian Evans, created heroines who defied traditional expectations of womanhood. To ensure their work was judged on its own merit rather than by the author's gender, these women often published under male pseudonyms. Their novels scrutinized the restricted lives of women, portraying them with an intellectual depth and moral complexity that Victorian society rarely recognized. Gradually, legal reforms began to dismantle these restrictions. The Married Women's Property Acts of 1870 and 1882 allowed women to keep their own earnings and property after marriage. The Matrimonial Causes Act of 1857 made divorce more accessible, though the system remained heavily stacked against women. By the end of Victoria's reign, women had secured a foothold in higher education, with colleges established at Oxford and Cambridge, although full university membership was still decades away. Beneath these sweeping social movements lay the mundane but fascinating texture of daily existence. Remarkably, a Victorian Londoner could mail a morning invitation for dinner and receive a reply by that same afternoon, all while living by a schedule so precise one could set a watch to it. For the majority of Britons, the day began before sunrise. In industrial towns, factory whistles shrieked at 5:30 a.m., calling workers to the assembly lines. By 6 a.m., the streets bustled with vendors, carts, and laborers rushing to avoid the fines associated with lateness. Breakfast for the working class was often a hasty necessity, perhaps a piece of bread with beef dripping eaten on the run, or cold porridge left over from the night before. The very perception of time shifted during this era. Before the railway standardized time in 1847, every town kept its own local time based on the sun. The Great Western Railway introduced railway time, based on Greenwich Mean Time, forcing the nation to synchronize its clocks and sparking a new obsession with punctuality. Public clock towers became civic icons, and the pocket watch became a coveted status symbol, even for working men who saved for months to buy one. Culinary habits differed drastically by social standing. The working poor bought food daily based on what they could afford, often shopping late in the day when prices dropped. Street vendors provided cheap, hot meals like eel pies, baked potatoes, whelks, and pea soup. The 1860s saw the arrival of penny restaurants, serving basic meat and vegetable dishes. By the 1880s, fish and chip shops began appearing in industrial hubs, offering hot, substantial meals for workers heading home. For the upper and middle classes, the day was a series of elaborate rituals. A gentleman might start with a heavy breakfast at 9 a.m., reading the newspaper delivered by the first of several daily posts. Ladies paid social calls between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., leaving calling cards if the hostess was not at home, a polite phrase often used to avoid visitors. Lunch at 1 p.m. was followed by business or shopping, then afternoon tea around 4 p.m., with dinner served as late as 8 p.m. for the fashionable elite. Clothing changes marked the passage of the day for the wealthy. A middle-class woman would wear a morning dress for domestic oversight, change into a walking dress for errands, switch to a tea gown for guests, and finally don an evening dress for dinner. Men similarly rotated from morning coats to frock coats and then to formal evening wear. In contrast, the working class made do with a single set of daily clothes, perhaps keeping one Sunday best outfit strictly for church. Hygiene presented a daily struggle. Without indoor plumbing, most Victorians used washstands with basins and pitchers. The effort required to heat and carry water meant full-body bathing was typically a weekly occurrence. By the mid-19th century, public bathhouses opened in many towns, offering hot baths for a small fee to those lacking facilities at home. Evenings revealed the sharp divide in leisure. Working-class families gathered in pubs, the community's living room, where news was shared and politics debated. Middle-class families stayed in, playing parlor games, reading aloud, or performing on the piano. By the 1880s, gas lighting had transformed the night, extending the hours available for both work and play. Sunday provided a pause in the rhythm for everyone. Factories fell silent and shops closed. Although church attendance dropped from nearly 60% in 1851 to around 35% by 1900, the day retained its special character. Families walked in parks wearing their finest clothes, and even the poorest households tried to prepare a special Sunday meal. While families enjoyed their leisure, the invisible workforce that made their comfort possible rarely stopped. Domestic servants, the largest occupational group in Victorian Britain, lived a life of contradiction. They handled the most intimate details of their employers' lives yet were socially erased. By the mid-century, roughly 1 in 3 working women was in domestic service, a massive workforce sustaining the Victorian lifestyle. Behind the facade of every respectable home lay a strict hierarchy. In wealthy houses, the butler ruled the male staff, while the housekeeper managed the female servants. These senior roles paid well. A butler might earn £50 a year plus room and board, while a regular maid might earn as little as £6 to £12. The pecking order went down to ladies' maids, housemaids, kitchen staff, and finally the scullery maids, who did the hardest cleaning and faced the worst drudgery. A servant's day began before dawn and often ended after midnight. Scullery maids rose at 4:30 a.m. to light fires and boil water. Even in smaller homes with only 1 or 2 servants, the work was relentless. Scrubbing floors, blacking grates, cooking meals, and washing endless piles of laundry. The physical toll was severe, with many suffering chronic injuries from carrying heavy coal and water up and down stairs all day. The psychological toll was equally heavy. Servants lived in a strange limbo, physically present but socially invisible. Bizarre rules enforced this. Some were banned from using the main stairs or told to face the wall if a family member passed. Backing out of a room was a physical sign of this erasure. They were tools for comfort, not people. Young girls often entered service directly from poor homes or workhouses. The role of the maid of all work, in smaller households, was particularly brutal, combining every domestic chore with total isolation. Without the community of a large staff, these solitary servants worked from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., often with only a half day off on Sundays. Their sleeping quarters were frequently damp cellars or pallets on the kitchen floor. Despite working near well-stocked pantries, servants often ate meager rations. While cooking roasts and desserts for employers, they subsisted on bread, dripping, and weak tea. One manual explicitly advised mistresses, never allow your servants the same food as served at your table. It encourages ideas above their station. However, petty theft of food became a quiet act of rebellion against this inequality. In larger homes, servants created their own complex society below stairs, with its own strict codes and exclusions. This harsh sentence, transportation to Australia, marked the last time such a medieval punishment was handed down in Britain. The Chartist movement, however, refused to be silenced. A second national petition in 1842 garnered even more support, collecting over 3.3 million signatures, yet Parliament once again rejected it. That same year, economic desperation sparked widespread unrest known as the plug plot riots across industrial areas. Workers sabotaged factories by removing the plugs from steam boilers, effectively halting production in hundreds of mills. Authorities responded with brute force, resulting in bloody clashes in several towns. The final major Chartist effort coincided with the revolutionary wave of 1848 that toppled monarchies across Europe. Terrified that a similar uprising would engulf Britain, the government deployed 85,000 special constables across London to counter a massive Chartist demonstration. Although the gathering at Kennington Common attracted tens of thousands, it remained peaceful. The petition, which claimed to hold 5 million signatures, though the actual count was significantly lower, was rejected for a third time. Following this defeat, Chartism faded as a unified political force, yet its legacy proved enduring. Over time, 5 of the movement's 6 key demands were enacted into law: the abolition of property qualifications for MPs in 1858, the secret ballot in 1872, payment for MPs in 1911, and near-universal male suffrage by 1918. Only the demand for annual parliaments was never implemented. Chartism's true significance lay in its ability to transform ordinary workers into political activists. Women like Knight and Mary and Walker formed female Chartist associations, challenging the movement's focus on male suffrage and advocating for broader women's rights. By establishing reading rooms and providing political education, these associations nurtured a generation of working-class leaders who would go on to build trade unions, cooperatives, and mutual aid societies. This political awakening helped drive broader social reforms. Lord Shaftesbury campaigned for factory laws and mine safety, while Florence Nightingale revolutionized nursing and hospital care. Edwin Chadwick's investigations into public health prompted sanitation improvements that saved countless lives. These upper and middle-class reformers were reacting to pressure from below, the organized demands of workers who refused to accept poverty as a natural state. In 1845, a microscopic organism arrived in Ireland that would change the nation's history forever. Phytophthora infestans, or potato blight, spread with terrifying speed, turning healthy crops into black, rotting sludge almost overnight. For the average Irish tenant farmer, this was a death sentence. The potato was not merely a dietary staple. It was the only crop that could provide enough sustenance on tiny plots of land to keep a family alive. The British government's response exposed the darkest side of Victorian economic philosophy. Charles Trevelyan, the official in charge of relief, infamously described the famine as the judgment of God, intended to teach the Irish a lesson in moral improvement. These views were not fringe. They reflected a widespread belief in laissez-faire economics and the idea that poverty was a moral failing. Relief programs centered on workhouses, which demanded that applicants surrender all property and split up their families, forcing proud farmers to choose between starvation and humiliation. Most damning of all was the continued export of food. Even as people collapsed from hunger, ships loaded with Irish wheat, oats, and livestock sailed regularly for English markets. In 1847, known as Black 47, nearly 4,000 vessels carried food out of Ireland, often guarded by soldiers to protect the cargo from starving crowds. This reality birthed the bitter Irish saying, "God sent the blight, but the English made the famine." Desperation drove people to unthinkable acts. Reports surfaced of parents feeding their children grass boiled with butter, of corpses stained green from eating nettles, and in the West, isolated accounts of people drinking cattle blood to survive. Disease followed closely behind hunger. Typhus, dysentery, and scurvy ravaged bodies already weakened by starvation. The dead often lay unburied as survivors were too weak to dig graves. Those who could flee did so under horrific conditions. The coffin ships earned their grim nickname honestly. Mortality rates on these overcrowded vessels could reach 30%. On the Luchu, sailing to Quebec in 1847, 117 of 462 passengers died at sea. Another ship, the Agnes, lost half its passengers. Survivors faced discrimination and poverty in their new homes, crowding into slums like Boston's North End or Liverpool's Scotland Road. The cultural impact was devastating. The famine accelerated the decline of the Irish language, as many who fled or died were from Gaelic-speaking regions. Traditional music and customs suffered similar losses. However, the Catholic Church, which retained public trust through its relief efforts, emerged with a strengthened influence that would shape Irish society for generations. Politically, the famine shattered faith in British rule. The failed Young Ireland Rebellion of 1848 planted the seeds for future nationalist movements, leading eventually to the Easter Rising of 1916. A poem in the Nation newspaper in 1847 captured the mood. "We are wretches, famished, scorned, human tools to build your pride, but God will yet take vengeance for the souls for whom Christ died." International reactions highlighted Victorian power dynamics. While groups like American Quakers sent aid, official British relief was hamstrung by ideology. When Ottoman Sultan Abdulmajid I attempted a generous donation, British diplomats reportedly intervened to avoid embarrassing Queen Victoria. Legend holds that the Sultan then secretly sent 3 ships of food to Drogheda, a gesture honored today by the star and crescent in the town's football crest. While famine ravaged Ireland, a silent killer was decimating Britain's own population. The rapid industrialization that enriched the nation created ideal conditions for disease. In London and Manchester, life expectancy plummeted. While rural residents might reach 60, industrial workers often died before 40. Victorian cities were essentially giant petri dishes. Raw sewage flowed directly into the Thames and other rivers, the very same sources used for drinking water. Open cesspools festered between houses, and thousands of families shared single outdoor privies. The stench was so overwhelming that in 1858, the Great Stink forced Parliament to suspend sessions because the smell from the Thames was unbearable. Members draped lime-soaked cloths over windows in a futile attempt to block the odor. Most medical authorities subscribed to the miasma theory, believing disease spread through foul air. Though scientifically wrong, this belief inadvertently led to progress. Convinced that bad smells caused illness, officials tackled sanitation. The Metropolitan Board of Works commissioned engineer Joseph Bazalgette to design London's first comprehensive sewer system, an 1,100-mile network that diverted waste away from the Thames. One man challenged the miasma orthodoxy with cold, hard data. In 1854, Dr. John Snow mapped cholera deaths in London's Soho district, tracing the outbreak to a single water pump on Broad Street. By removing the pump's handle, he halted the epidemic and proved that contaminated water, not air, was the true carrier of cholera. Although medical authorities initially dismissed his findings, Dr. Snow's work eventually revolutionized how disease was understood and combated. The Public Health Act of 1848 established the nation's first health board, but its effectiveness was crippled by a Victorian reluctance to interfere with private property rights. It wasn't until 1875 that a more comprehensive act was passed, legally binding local authorities to provide proper drainage, regular waste removal, and clean water. Tragically, these reforms arrived too late for the countless victims of the 4 major cholera epidemics that devastated Britain between 1831 and 1866. Victorian hospitals themselves were frequently gateways to death rather than healing. Florence Nightingale famously observed that soldiers in military hospitals were more likely to die from preventable infections than from the wounds of battle. In civilian wards, patients often shared beds, surgical tools were reused without washing, and doctors would move straight from dissecting corpses to examining living patients without ever washing their hands. The introduction of antiseptics by Joseph Lister in the 1860s marked a turning point. By spraying carbolic acid during surgeries, Lister dramatically cut post-operative infections. When he published his results in 1867, revealing that mortality rates had dropped from 45% to 15%, many of his colleagues still mocked his methods. It would take decades for sterile procedures to become the standard. For those seeking to avoid the horrors of the hospital, a booming market of patent medicines offered dubious, often dangerous, alternatives. Newspapers were filled with advertisements for miraculous cures. From Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup for teething babies, which contained morphine, to various blood mixtures for female complaints, these unregulated concoctions often included lethal ingredients like lead, mercury, arsenic, and narcotics. The popular Daffy's elixir, marketed as a cure for everything from colic to melancholy, was essentially gin spiked with laxatives. Women were prime targets for these pseudo-medical entrepreneurs. Lydia Pinkham's vegetable compound promised relief from all those painful complaints and weaknesses so common to our best female population. While its 18% alcohol content likely provided temporary comfort, its medical value was negligible. Similarly, Dr. Williams' pink pills for pale people claimed to cure ailments ranging from paralysis to female weakness, despite consisting of nothing more than sugar and iron oxide. Beyond the dangerous world of snake oil and patent medicines lay another battleground: the fight for knowledge. While the wealthy sent their sons to elite institutions like Eton and Harrow, the vast majority of British children faced a bleak reality. In 1840, less than 40% of children had any access to formal schooling. For millions of working-class families, education was an unaffordable luxury when every family member's labor was needed just to survive. The educational landscape was chaotic and fragmented. Some poor children attended dame schools, informal classes run by elderly women in their own homes, teaching basic reading for a few pennies a week. Others found spots in ragged schools, charitable institutions designed for the most destitute. These schools, often housed in converted warehouses or church basements, served children too poor, dirty, or unruly to be accepted anywhere else. The quality of these schools varied wildly. One inspector described a typical dame school as a small, stuffy room, 20 to 30 children crowded on benches, learning by rote from tattered books under the supervision of an elderly woman whose only qualification is that she is too old for any other work. In rural areas, education was even scarcer, as agricultural work took precedence, especially during harvest seasons. Middle-class boys received a vastly different education, focused heavily on the classics. Public schools like Rugby emphasized Latin, Greek, and mathematics, subjects believed to build mental discipline rather than practical skills. Girls from similar backgrounds were taught accomplishments suitable for future wives and mothers: singing, drawing, needlework, and perhaps a little French. One 1845 prospectus for a girls' school promised to teach those branches of education calculated to form useful and pleasing members of society, without the pedantry of learned ladies. Everything changed with the Elementary Education Act of 1870, championed by William Forster. This watershed legislation created the first framework for a nationwide school system, requiring elementary education for all children aged 5 to 13. School boards were set up to build and manage schools where none existed. By 1880, attendance was compulsory, and by 1891 it was free. However, enforcement was inconsistent, particularly in areas where child labor was an economic necessity. The expansion of education sparked intense social tension. Factory owners hated losing their cheap workforce, and many parents couldn't afford to lose their children's wages. The Manchester School Board recorded numerous evasions, such as Mary Smith, age 9, absent 43 days this quarter. Mother claims illness but child seen working at mill. Attendance officers, known as school board men, became dreaded figures in working-class neighborhoods as they hunted down truants and prosecuted parents. Progressive women like Emily Davies and Frances Buss emerged as powerful advocates for female education. Buss founded the North London Collegiate School in 1850, pioneering an academic curriculum for girls that rivaled boys' schools. Davies established Girton College at Cambridge in 1869, fighting for women's access to university despite fierce opposition. One member of Parliament famously warned that higher education would make women mannish and unseemly, predicting that educated women would produce weak, precocious, and undersized children. Victorian classrooms were incredibly strict by modern standards. Corporal punishment was routine. The cane, strap, or ruler was used for offenses ranging from messy handwriting to poor recitation. Children sat in rows, learning by rote and copying from blackboards. Religious instruction was central, with Bible readings and hymns starting every day. One Yorkshire schoolmaster's logbook noted, "Caned William Brown for blasphemy. Memorization of 10 Commandments assigned as correction." Despite the harsh conditions, literacy rates soared. In 1841, only 67% of men and 51% of women could sign their names. By 1900, those figures had risen to 97% and 96%. This transformation created a hungry new reading public, eager for content of all kinds. But this newly literate society faced a question far more troubling than any spelling test. Could the old faith survive in an age of fossils and microscopes? Despite the outward appearance of a unified Christian nation, Victorian Britain was secretly undergoing a profound intellectual revolution that would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. Christianity dominated Victorian life, with church attendance serving as the ultimate badge of respectability. While the Church of England was the established state religion, evangelical movements injected a passionate new energy into faith practices. Religious observance wasn't just personal, it dictated public policy, social interactions, and moral standards. Sunday was strictly observed as the Sabbath, commerce halted, and families attended morning and evening services. Beyond worship, religion permeated daily life through Bible study groups, prayer meetings, and parish-organized charity. For the burgeoning middle class, religious devotion offered both spiritual solace and a confirmation of social status. Biblical literacy was not merely encouraged, it was demanded. Children memorized scripture from a young age, and for many Victorians, the Bible was the first, and sometimes only, book they owned. Yet, beneath this veneer of unified faith, the era witnessed extraordinary scientific advancements that would shake the foundations of traditional belief. The publication of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species in 1859 triggered what scholars term the Victorian crisis of faith. Darwin's theory of natural selection provided a mechanism for evolution that required no divine intervention. It proposed that organisms changed gradually over immense periods through natural processes, rather than appearing instantly via divine creation. This theory directly contradicted literal interpretations of Genesis and suggested that humans shared a lineage with other primates, rather than being uniquely crafted in God's image. The implications stretched far beyond biology. Geologists like Charles Lyell had already demonstrated that the Earth was vastly older than the biblical timeline allowed. While archaeological discoveries began to question the historical accuracy of Scripture, these scientific revelations forced Victorians to grapple with their most fundamental beliefs about human origins and purpose. Many, including Darwin himself, who had once studied to become a clergyman, experienced profound spiritual turmoil. Surprisingly, this era of scientific rationalism coincided with an explosion of interest in the supernatural. Spiritualism, the belief that the living could communicate with the dead, gained immense popularity, especially after the American Fox sisters claimed to contact spirits in 1848. By the 1860s, seances had become fashionable social events where participants might witness table tipping, automatic writing, or materialized spirits. This movement held particular appeal for women, who often served as mediums, finding in spiritualist circles a rare opportunity to exercise public authority. Victorian fascination with the fringes of science flourished in other ways as well. Phrenology, reading character traits from the shape of the skull, was wildly popular, as was mesmerism, a forerunner to modern hypnotism. These pseudosciences occupied a middle ground, adopting the language of science while addressing spiritual anxieties about consciousness and human nature. But the Victorians weren't just obsessed with the afterlife, they were equally obsessed with the material world. They created entire languages out of objects, clothing, and table settings that spoke volumes about a person's place in society. The same culture that held seances to contact the dead also developed the first modern department stores, transforming shopping from a necessity into a form of entertainment and social ritual. Before this retail revolution, shopping meant visiting multiple specialized stores or dealing with street vendors. Purchasing goods typically involved haggling in small, crowded shops where merchandise was kept behind counters, accessible only to the shopkeeper. The advent of department stores like Harrods, founded as a grocer in 1849, and later Selfridges in 1909 introduced revolutionary concepts. Fixed prices, open displays where customers could browse freely, and a diverse array of goods under one roof. The Great Exhibition of 1851 accelerated this transformation in consumer culture. Housed in the purpose-built Crystal Palace in Hyde Park, this unprecedented event was a temple to industry and empire, displaying everything from massive industrial machinery to delicate handicrafts from colonial territories. Queen Victoria herself visited multiple times, writing in her journal of the wondrous beauty she encountered. Unlike previous exhibitions reserved for the elite, the Great Exhibition welcomed visitors from all classes. Excursion trains brought workers from across Britain to marvel at the technological wonders of their age. For the Victorian middle class, possessions became crucial markers of respectability and aspiration. The parlor or drawing room functioned as a curated stage for the family, filled with decorative items like figurines, potted plants, embroidered screens, and photographs. Victorians coined the term bric-a-brac for these small ornamental objects that cluttered their homes, each item a statement about the family's taste and financial standing. Fashion operated as an equally complex social language. Women's silhouettes transformed dramatically throughout the era, from the bell-shaped crinolines of the 1850s and 60s, requiring up to 40 yards of fabric, to the bustle-enhanced skirts of the 1870s and 80s. These were not mere trends but visual embodiments of Victorian ideals regarding femininity, modesty, and status. A respectable middle-class woman required multiple outfit changes daily: morning dress, walking dress, visiting dress, dinner dress, and evening attire for special occasions. Men's fashion appeared more uniform but contained equally strict codes. The dark frock coat and top hat signaled business respectability, while the precise cut of a jacket or the quality of a waistcoat communicated subtle differences in wealth. Etiquette manuals proliferated, instructing readers on everything from the proper way to wear gloves to the correct protocol for leaving calling cards. The Victorian dining table became perhaps the most elaborately coded space of all. Upper and middle-class dinner parties followed rigid protocols with multiple courses served in a specific order. Isabella Beeton's famous book of Household Management, 1861, became the Bible of proper dining, offering over 2,700 entries covering everything from soup to pudding. Dinner tables groaned under specific utensils: fish knives, asparagus servers, grape scissors, each requiring specific knowledge to use correctly. Tea drinking evolved from simple refreshment to a formalized ritual after the Duchess of Bedford introduced afternoon tea in the 1840s. This new custom filled the long gap between lunch and dinner with delicate sandwiches, scones, and cakes served on the finest china. Even for families of modest means, owning a decent tea service became essential for maintaining respectability. The most extraordinary displays of status centered around exotic foods. Pineapples, originally from South America, became the ultimate luxury item. Cultivating them required expensive heated greenhouses, making a single fruit cost the equivalent of thousands of pounds today. Unable to afford to buy one, many hosts instead rented pineapples purely for display at dinner parties, returning them afterward to specialized fruiterers who would then rent the same fruit to the next status-conscious host. Beyond the rigid rituals of the dining room lay another world entirely, one where factory whistles fell silent and even the poorest laborer could find a few precious hours of freedom. The same era that glorified work as a virtue paradoxically gave birth to the world's first true entertainment industry and the very concept of free time as we understand it today. The Industrial Revolution revolutionized how ordinary people experienced time. Factory schedules divided the day with mechanical precision. Work hours and leisure hours became clearly delineated, creating something previously unknown to agricultural workers: predictable free time. By the 1870s, the Saturday half-holiday movement had gained ground, giving workers their first taste of the weekend. The expanding railway network transformed leisure. Excursion trains carried over 25 million passengers annually by the 1860s, allowing factory workers to escape smoke-filled cities for seaside retreats. Brighton, once an exclusive playground for the wealthy, saw more than 250,000 day-trippers arrive on bank holidays. Coastal towns responded by building pleasure piers, promenades, and bathing machines that allowed modest Victorians to enjoy the sea while preserving their propriety. Music halls emerged as the quintessential working-class entertainment, with over 300 venues operating in London alone by 1870. For a few pennies, audiences could enjoy variety acts featuring comedians, singers, acrobats, and spectacles. Performers like Marie Lloyd rose to national stardom, singing songs laced with cheeky double entendres that cleverly danced around strict Victorian censorship laws. The rowdy atmosphere of the music halls, filled with drinking, smoking, and audience participation, horrified middle-class reformers, yet these venues provided vital cultural spaces where ordinary people could briefly forget their troubles. Sporting culture also underwent a remarkable transformation. Folk games that had existed as unregulated traditions were codified into organized sports with standardized rules. The Football Association was established in 1863, followed by the Rugby Football Union in 1871 and lawn tennis in 1877. Cricket expanded from an aristocratic pastime into a national passion, with county championships launching in the 1870s. By the 1880s, professional football clubs were drawing crowds of 30,000 spectators, with working-class men often paying a week's beer money just to support their local teams. The Victorian home evolved into its own entertainment hub. Winter evenings were filled with parlor games like charades, blind man's bluff, and Snapdragon, a dangerous game where players snatched raisins from a bowl of burning brandy. Musical performances around the piano became the centerpiece of middle-class gatherings, driving sheet music sales to record highs. The stereoscope, a device that created 3D images from special photographs, acted as the Victorian equivalent of virtual reality, allowing families to visit exotic lands without leaving their sitting rooms. Public spectacles grew increasingly elaborate. Panoramas, massive curved paintings up to 400 feet long, immersed audiences in historical events or foreign landscapes. Magic lantern shows projected colored images onto walls, creating ghostly apparitions that delighted and terrified viewers in equal measure. P.T. Barnum's famous tours in the 1840s introduced the modern circus, combining exotic animals, human oddities, and theatrical spectacle. Even traditional holidays were reinvented. Christmas transformed from a minor religious observance into the heart of Victorian family life. Prince Albert popularized the German tradition of the decorated Christmas tree, while Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol cemented the holiday's focus on charity and family togetherness. Christmas cards first appeared in the 1840s. By the 1880s, over 11 million were being sent annually. But as millions of Christmas cards circulated, the British Empire was about to receive a brutal wake-up call that would reshape its understanding of modern warfare. The Crimean War, 1853 to 1856, marked a violent collision between Britain's romanticized ideals of military glory and the grim realities of industrialized combat. Though fought on the distant shores of the Black Sea, this conflict reached into Victorian parlors in unprecedented ways. For the first time in history, the public could follow the war almost in real time. William Howard Russell, writing for The Times, became the world's first war correspondent. His unflinching dispatches described the chaos and suffering, sparking national outrage with reports of soldiers freezing in inadequate uniforms while supplies rotted on docks just miles away. The Telegraph dramatically compressed the time between events and public awareness, transmitting news across Europe in hours rather than weeks. The conflict stemmed from complex geopolitical maneuvering over the declining Ottoman Empire, with Russia seeking control of strategic Black Sea routes. Britain, fearing Russian expansion toward India, the jewel in the crown of its empire, joined forces with France, the Ottoman Empire, and Sardinia to check Russian ambitions. What followed was a catastrophic display of British military unpreparedness. The siege of Sevastopol dragged on for nearly a year, exposing critical failures in supply lines, command structures, and medical care. Winter brought immense suffering as temperatures plunged to -20 degrees Celsius. Thousands of soldiers huddled in muddy trenches with insufficient food, shelter, or clothing. One officer wrote home, "Our men have not a change of anything. No beds but the muddy ground. No covering but the sky." Perhaps nothing captured the war's tragic absurdity better than the charge of the Light Brigade at Balaclava. Due to a miscommunication, 670 British cavalrymen charged directly into a valley flanked by Russian artillery. Within minutes, over a third were killed or wounded. Lord Tennyson immortalized their sacrifice in his famous poem, "Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. While Russian bullets took their toll, preventable diseases like cholera, dysentery, and typhus were the true killers. In military hospitals, the wounded were packed into filthy wards with minimal care. The mortality rate in these facilities reached a shocking 42%, prompting Florence Nightingale's historic intervention. Arriving with a team of 38 nurses, Nightingale found patients lying in their own excrement, surgical tools crusted with old blood, and sewage backing up beneath the floors. Her methodical reforms, improving ventilation, hygiene, and nutrition, dramatically reduced death rates. Using innovative Rose diagrams, she statistically proved how preventable diseases were decimating the army. The war also introduced modern technologies that would define future conflicts. The telegraph allowed generals to communicate over vast distances, while railways transported troops and supplies. Both sides utilized rifled muskets, which offered superior range and accuracy. Most revolutionarily, Roger Fenton arrived as the first official war photographer. His composed images of cannon-lined valleys and solemn officers brought the visual reality of war into Victorian homes, beginning to erode the romantic view of battle. While the photographs from Crimea troubled the public, a far greater imperial nightmare was brewing in the east. In Britain's most valuable colony, deep-seated grievances were converging to trigger the largest uprising the empire had ever faced. On May 10, 1857, in the garrison town of Meerut, Indian soldiers, sepoys, serving under British officers took an unprecedented step. 85 sepoys had been imprisoned for refusing to use new rifle cartridges rumored to be greased with cow and pig fat, substances forbidden by Hindu and Muslim beliefs. Their comrades broke rank, freed the prisoners, and turned their weapons on their British commanders. By morning, the rebels had killed dozens of Europeans and began marching toward Delhi. This was no localized revolt. Within weeks, mutinies erupted across northern India. The rebels seized major territories, including the symbolic prize of Delhi, where they proclaimed the elderly Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah II, the ruler of a liberated India. The uprising united dispossessed princes, landlords, peasants, and religious leaders against British rule. The grievances went far beyond cartridges. The East India Company's aggressive annexation policies had deposed Indian rulers, while harsh land taxes impoverished farmers. Christian missionary activities sparked fears of forced conversion, and technological changes like railways were viewed as threats to traditional culture. When reports of the violence reached Britain, they shocked Victorian society. At Kanpur, after the massacre of British women and children by rebel leader Nana Sahib, British retribution was swift and brutal. General Neil ordered captured rebels to lick bloodstains from the floor before being executed. In Delhi, entire neighborhoods were razed and thousands of civilians were killed. Retaliation often included calculated religious humiliation, such as forcing Muslims to eat pork or Hindus to eat beef before execution. The British press portrayed these events through a strictly imperial lens. The Illustrated London News published dramatic engravings of brave British soldiers defending helpless women against savage attackers. Few accounts acknowledged the legitimate grievances that fueled the rebellion. Instead, it was characterized as an irrational outbreak of barbarism, justifying the harshest possible suppression. The East India Company, having ruled vast swathes of India as a commercial enterprise for a century, could not survive the political fallout of the rebellion. In August 1858, Parliament passed the Government of India Act, transferring all territories directly to the British Crown. This marked the beginning of the British Raj, governed by a viceroy representing the Queen, with a complex administrative structure built to prevent any future uprisings. The transformation went far beyond governance. The military was deliberately unbalanced to ensure security. British soldiers were given control of artillery and key positions to outnumber Indian troops in critical sectors. Recruitment strategies shifted to focus on the so-called martial races, ethnic groups like the Sikhs, Gurkhas, and Pathans who had remained loyal during the mutiny, while previously dominant groups were systematically excluded from service. Social relations hardened into a rigid racial hierarchy. British officials, who in the 18th century might have adopted Indian customs or married Indian women, now maintained a strict distance. Colonial clubs, hill stations, and segregated neighborhoods became the physical symbols of this divide. A culture of suspicion took root, with intelligence reports constantly tracking troublemakers, and surveillance of native newspapers becoming routine. Queen Victoria's 1858 proclamation promised religious tolerance and equal treatment, but the reality was starkly different. The British doubled down on their civilizing mission, establishing English-language universities to create a class of intermediaries. Thomas Macaulay famously described the goal: to create a class Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. Ironically, these Western-educated elites would eventually form the backbone of the independence movement that dismantled British rule. As Britain tightened its grip on India, its imperial gaze turned toward southern Africa, where the empire would face a warrior culture unlike any it had encountered before. In 1879, High Commissioner Sir Bartle Frere issued an impossible ultimatum to King Cetshwayo of the Zulu Kingdom, demanding he disband his army. When Cetshwayo inevitably refused, the Anglo-Zulu War began, a conflict the British arrogantly expected to win easily against what they deemed primitive opponents. The Zulu military, however, was far from primitive. Built around age-based regiments known as Amabutho, they employed sophisticated tactics, such as the buffalo horns formation to encircle enemies. Their warriors were highly disciplined, armed with short stabbing spears, assegai, and cowhide shields. On January 22, 1879, at Isandawana, the British suffered a catastrophic defeat. A force of nearly 1,400 British and colonial troops was overrun by approximately 20,000 Zulu warriors. Contrary to colonial myths, the British weren't just overwhelmed by numbers, they were outmaneuvered. Over 1,300 British soldiers were killed, marking the worst defeat of a modern army by an indigenous force with traditional weaponry. That same day, just 10 miles away at Rorke's Drift, a different story unfolded. A garrison of just 150 British troops held off 4,000 Zulu warriors for 12 hours. The defense became legendary, resulting in 11 Victoria Crosses, the highest number ever awarded for a single engagement. Eventually, British firepower prevailed. By July 1879, at the Battle of Ulundi, the British used Gatling guns and artillery to crush the Zulu impis. The kingdom was carved into 13 separate territories, effectively ending Zulu independence. 20 years later, Britain's imperial might was tested again, this time by the descendants of Dutch settlers known as Boers. After an embarrassing British defeat in the First Anglo-Boer War 1880 to 1881, peace was short-lived. The discovery of massive gold deposits in the Transvaal drew thousands of British prospectors, reigniting tensions. The Second Anglo-Boer War 1899 to 1902 began disastrously for Britain. The Boers, expert horsemen who knew the terrain, besieged British towns and inflicted a string of humiliations during Black Week in December 1899. When the British finally used their overwhelming numbers to turn the tide, the Boers shifted to guerrilla warfare. In response, Lord Kitchener implemented a ruthless, scorched earth policy, burning farms and poisoning wells to deny the guerrillas supplies. Most controversially, the British established concentration camps to intern Boer civilians and black Africans displaced from the land. The conditions in these camps were horrific. Overcrowding and poor sanitation led to rampant measles and typhoid. The human cost was staggering. Over 27,000 Boer civilians died in the camps, the vast majority being children under the age of 16. At least 14,000 black Africans also perished in separate, segregated camps, though poor record-keeping suggests the true number was likely much higher. British activist Emily Hobhouse exposed these atrocities, writing, "To keep these people alive is the only humane course." Her reports outraged the British public. Liberal politician David Lloyd George condemned the policy of extermination, while opposition leader Henry Campbell Bannerman famously called these methods of barbarism. While questions of imperial morality haunted the national conscience, a parallel revolution was unfolding in workshops across Britain. The Victorian era saw a technological acceleration that reshaped the human experience. The steam engine had already compressed time and space. By 1850, 6,000 miles of railway track connected the nation. Beneath the waves, the world was shrinking. In 1866, the transatlantic telegraph cable successfully connected Europe and America. A message that once took weeks now arrived in minutes. By 1870, Britons read about battles in the Franco-Prussian War on the very day they occurred, the birth of the immediate media cycle we know today. Cities transformed as night turned into day. Gas lighting had started the process, but by the 1880s, electricity took over. Newcastle saw streetlights in 1879, and by 1890 wealthy Londoners were installing private generators. Domestic life saw its own renaissance. Isaac Singer's sewing machine became a middle-class staple by the 1860s. Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, 1876, promised to revolutionize communication. Even the bathroom changed. While Thomas Crapper didn't invent the flush toilet, his marketing popularized indoor plumbing. Elisha Otis's safety elevator made high-rise living possible, and the safety bicycle of the 1880s gave women unprecedented mobility. Inventors became the rock stars of the age. Crowds flocked to see Isambard Kingdom Brunel's massive ships or Thomas Edison's phonograph. Even the humble tin can, perfected in the 1860s, changed how humanity ate. These technologies were not just for comfort, they were tools of empire. Railways and telegraphs allowed Britain to govern vast territories with a speed previously impossible, presented to the world as proof of Britain's civilizing superiority. The dawn of 1901 brought a profound moment of national stillness. On January 22, Queen Victoria took her final breath at Osborne House, surrounded by her family. Her death marked the end of an era that had fundamentally reshaped the globe. As her funeral procession moved toward Windsor, the nation stood caught between reverence for the past and deep uncertainty about the future. Victoria's son, Edward VII, ascended the throne at 59. He was a man of the new century, cosmopolitan and fond of leisure, a stark contrast to his mother's conservative austerity. This shift at the top reflected broader cracks in the imperial foundation. The empire, stretching from Canada to India, was straining. The Boer War had been a costly, humiliating struggle. In India, nationalism was stirring among the very elites Britain had educated. And globally, the industrial might of Germany and the United States was beginning to eclipse Britain's dominance. Domestically, the old social order was fracturing. The Labour Party formed in 1900, giving a political voice to the working class. The suffragette movement, led by Emmeline Pankhurst, adopted militant tactics to demand the vote for women. Even the aristocracy felt the squeeze of new taxes and a changing economy. Literature captured this twilight mood. Thomas Hardy wrote of a vanishing rural England, while Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, 1899, questioned the very morality of imperialism. Technology accelerated this sense of a new age. By 1901, the first cinemas opened, Marconi sent radio signals across the Atlantic, and the Wright brothers were just 2 years away from flight. The short Edwardian era that followed is often remembered nostalgically as a sunlit afternoon of garden parties, but the storm clouds were gathering. The constitutional crises, labor strikes, and social upheavals were mere preludes to the catastrophe of 1914, which would finally sweep away the Victorian world. Yet, the Victorian legacy remains. In the railways we ride, the sewers that keep our cities clean, the school systems we use, and the very concept of progress, the Victorians shaped the modern world. From public health to the fight for fairness, their era teaches us that real change comes when people demand it. If you found this journey into the birth of the modern world fascinating, hit subscribe. There is always more history just beneath the surface.